Welcome to Curious Joel, a show about curiosity, taking us deeper into the topics of people's passion and interesting conversation. My guest today is John Jacobs. How are you doing today?
I'm doing okay.
Good.
How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. So what is your passion, John?
Well, my career path, a key part of my career path has been teaching what's called wilderness medicine.
Okay. For those of you that don't know, what is wilderness medicine?
Wilderness medicine is a discipline of pre-hospital care, emergency medicine that is applied to contexts and situations where you are hours or days away from medical help. So it's based upon the basic premises of traditional emergency medicine, but in places where you can't call like 911 or have an ambulance.
Middle of nowhere, you're not getting an ambulance in the next 2 minutes,
in remote places.
Yeah. Okay. So what does that look like practically speaking? Like how do you do that? Like what does that look like?
How do I teach it?
Yeah.
These are courses that are used either professionally by outdoor leaders, sometimes biologists, search and rescue personnel, people that work or play in remote areas.
Mm-hmm.
And there are varying lengths of courses, anywhere between a few hours to a few weeks. They're taught in a setting where it's a traditional classroom sort of setting about part of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then part of the time is experiential, outdoors,
Okay.
using scenarios and drills and skills exercises, that kind of thing.
Okay, so it's a mix of things. But yeah, okay. And where did you find this? Like, how did you come about, like, this is what I want to do? Like, when did that happen and what did that look like?
Well, a long time ago, I found myself very interested in just outdoor adventure education stuff. I hiked the PCT back in the 80s before it became an Instagram thing. Came back from that and decided I wanted to figure out a way to get into I wasn't clear about what it was, but I wanted to get into some sort of outdoor skills instruction type of stuff.
Uh-huh.
And one of the first things I tried to do was working with search and rescue, and I joined the search and rescue team down in San Diego and worked with them for about 9 years or so. Mm. And as part of that, I had to get some medical training. So I chose to take an EMT class, which was okay. It wasn't super useful for the outdoor world I was interested in pursuing.
Right. A lot of that is, I have an ambulance here, or
all this stuff is here. Yeah.
Okay.
But when I heard about a wilderness EMT upgrade course being offered at a local community college in San Diego County, I got interested in that. And I went down and took that course. And that particular course they took was particularly unique in terms of the length and the depth the instructor did with it was very unusual. It was a full semester long.
Okay.
It's far longer than any other similar course that's offered these days. Mm-hmm. And it just kind of brainwashed me. I found it was a really interesting synthesis for me of medicine and the outdoor world. It really captivated me. And I started getting in the instructor right after the course, got into learning how to instruct it, and started teaching it almost immediately. And been at it now for over 33 years.
You kind of had that epiphany moment in that class of just bam, this is it. That's really cool. It's really cool when you can experience this, where was this all my life? Okay. So from previous conversations with you, I know that you had an interesting journey. Can you tell us a little bit about that journey, what it looks like, how you got to where you are now? Just kind of walk us through that.
Well, let's see. Education-wise, I got out of high school, and honestly, I really did not like traditional schooling at all. It didn't work for me very well. And I wanted to pursue something in the outdoor world, as I said. And hiking the PCT, especially at that time, was a very different experience than it is now. But it was an incredibly important turning point for me, seeing that there was this world out there that was attractive to me. I couldn't figure out how to do it exactly, but it was intriguing. And yeah, so the wilderness medicine thing kind of came up in the way I described there. And concurrent with that, I also got into outdoor education and started working for the Pacific Crest Outward Bound School.
Okay.
Teaching mountaineering courses in the Sierra Nevada and in a little bit in Joshua Tree too.
Okay.
But did that for quite some time too. And these courses were they're long courses, 14 to 22 days in particular, teaching mountaineering, backpacking, climbing skills in the Sierra Nevada. Even prior to that whole path, mountains and mountain-oriented type of sports have been always really close to my spirit and soul.
So you've always been an outdoor person. You're like, get me out of the inside. I want to be out. I want to be up. I want to be up in the rocks and mountains and stuff. So
mountains and hiking and climbing, especially, for sure.
Okay.
So I've done a ton of climbing and hiking especially across the Western U.S. A little bit in Alaska and Mexico and that kind of thing. But yeah, so that's been a key part. So it really was a synthesis of the outdoor education, adventure education career path that I was interested in, and wilderness medicine, which kind of fused together nicely, the two of them together.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's been my primary career path throughout my adult life.
I have a question that I based on what you just said, I think I have an idea of what it is, but like, what kept you moving through these different steps? Like something urged you forward into the next step. Like what made you continue pushing forward?
It just felt right. This is what I wanted to do. I made a choice pretty early on in my life that there were lots of people around me, friends, family, and whatnot, that were choosing paths that were kind of traditional and like what people just do.
I'm a manager at a bank, and
yeah, or you go to college, you get your job, you get married, you have kids, and then you work very hard, and then in the end you like retire, and then you do the things you want to do in your life. And I just that did not set right with me.
You're like, wait, why can't I just do what I want now?
My life is short, and like it's time to do. I want to do what I want to do, and so it had to be something that I wanted to do and felt within my life, and that I'm not saving up to do something in the future.
Right. Okay. So just kind of like this, life itself kind of drove you forward of like, I'm not wasting this doing some boring cubicle bank job. Like I'm doing what I like.
Yeah. I felt a long time ago, I made a decision that like, I wanted to live my life in such a way where if I was to leave this planet at any given day, that I could look back at it and go like, that was pretty good. Yeah, I pretty much did what I wanted to do. I mean, we can always make different choices and better things can always happen. But like, I didn't want to feel like if I was to leave this planet that I'd look back and go like, gee, I sure wish I had done that. I should have done these things.
Don't wait till the end of life to start
thinking I was going to do this at some point in my life, but then that never really happened. I never wanted to feel that way.
Yeah, you don't want to wait till the end to start checking off boxes on your bucket list. You want to like, hey,
do it now.
I've been going through this pretty quickly, like, actually getting stuff done. And then, okay. I like that a lot. So let's dive a little bit deeper into like the different steps. Cause I know you have a lot on your resume, so to speak, of like different like positions you held, different things that you've been doing. And then like you move from there to other things. Can we talk about like kind of chronologically those like key stepping stones? So I know, for instance, like you were the training, brain is not remembered very well.
I was training officer for the mountain rescue team I was associated with. Yeah,
but like key points in your career like that. Like, can we talk about a couple of those? Starting with the training VP.
That was a good opportunity. Working with Mountain Rescue did a couple things for me.
Okay.
In first place, it created a network of people that did things that I was interested in doing, mountain-oriented type of sports. And really, it's a network of people that I still maintain, like decades later. It's one of the most important circles of people in my life still. So it created a network of people to be able to do this stuff with. It also was a great place to start to develop skills and my background. My technical skills and outdoor skills weren't that strong at that time. And that created a great place to like start to build that. And then being the training officer of the team was sort of like one of my first forays into like learning how to teach. You know, like set up a whole curriculum to teach a particular skill set, whatever it happens to be, and then deliver it in an effective way. So that was a good place to learn how to do that.
Yeah, it can. I know for me, it's a little nerve-wracking, a little daunting sometimes. Like, okay, did I make sure I covered everything? Is this all going to make sense to these people that I don't know who I'm training yet? You know, like it can be a little like, like what did that feel like for you? Like trying to develop that for the first time.
A lot of hours were spent in the early days of like mapping things out very carefully with like pre-scripted scripts, things you're going to say, to make sure that you cover everything that you want to cover in there. And it was pretty bad. my early teaching was really pretty bad.
Hey, it's all a journey. There's very few people that they're like, oh yeah, no, teaching just came super natural. I didn't ever skip a beat. It's always that way. Like every one of these first ones, like, hey, so we're learning stuff today. Like it's always a little rough. It's always has some sort of hiccups at the beginning, but like, I like to think of teaching as an extended learning period. Like you have to learn the materials all over again. You have to learn them in a different way. You have to learn how to teach them, which takes a whole nother level of understanding than like, There's a lot of
nuances to it.
The
ability to read your students and know where your students are at and like, deliver the information at a level that they can hear it, as opposed to where you want them to be. Those are often different things.
Yeah. So how can you give us like an example of something that in your teaching has improved since then? Like what is your like proudest evolution of your teaching?
In respect to wilderness medicine, it's probably just for starters, generally knowing who my audience is, who my students are, and what their needs are, having a better sense for the industry, the outdoor education leadership industry, search and rescue, all these different disciplines and environments that people work within. I'm much more familiar with that, and therefore can like deliver the information in a practical way, information that's really going to be useful to them, and cut away the fluff, cut away the nice to knows, and really focus more on the need to knows with them. Like that, I've gotten a lot better with. Coming into it early on, like you have this view of what you think people need to know, which is based upon your own experience. But you come to learn that not everybody, the information that you think is important is not necessarily useful to
You're like, people. I use this all the time. It's like, yes, but that you have a specific circumstance. Does that specific circumstance
particular context you use it in?
Right. Yeah. Context is
the way I would use it.
Key with teaching.
So gaining that experience and perspective on people's backgrounds, that's improved a lot as years have gone on.
I feel like it makes it more dynamic and precise.
Yeah. And then methodologies and tools and ways to deliver the information, that's evolved a lot too. You start off teaching with kind of a simple set of things that you've seen other people do, you emulate a lot of other people's style, which in the early days, I came to learn that's not a good way to go, because the styles that you might have resonated with you and the way you see people teach, when you try to just like put that on and teach the same way, it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
Like you have to develop your own comfort level and your own style.
Yeah.
Eventually.
There's a weird correlation to teaching styles and something in the Dungeons and Dragons world that's called the Matt Mercer effect. So Matt Mercer is somebody that is phenomenal narrator. He knows all the rules of the game. He knows all this stuff. He's one of the most like well-known D&D dungeon masters in the world. And what happens is people then come to like my session or something like that, or some another DM session going like, well, you don't teach like he does. And so what that ends up doing is DMs are like, well, I have to be Matt Mercer. Otherwise, no one likes what I'm doing. No one is going to care what I'm doing.
Anybody that tries to like deliver it that way,
yeah,
the listener just goes like,
right, and
stop being this other person,
right?
Like, just be yourself.
And so, like something I've learned in general, when you're trying to develop something yourself, is like trying to find like, okay, I like that aspect, and that piece is something that resonates with me. And like you can borrow a little bit from other people, but like eventually you develop your own style. And like, oh wow, and then you can look back and be like, I was trying to be that person.
Yeah, people know, your students know when you're being authentic,
right?
When you have your own style
mm-hmm.
and you're delivering it in a way that's you're comfortable with, like they just know it. And they also know when you're emulating somebody else, and that
right.
doesn't resonate as well for them.
Yeah, and it's something that like I feel like a lot of people have a decent sense of like this innate ability to understand authenticity to some extent, and like with kids it's ridiculously high. Kids will know the moment when you're like, you're awesome. It's like, no, you don't like me at all. Like they know exactly what you're thinking better than you do sometimes. Yeah. And as we grow older, we still have that. And like when people are trying to present themselves, but it's not themselves, it's somebody else that they're trying to like, they have this weird facade up of, you know, Frankenstein's monster of, this is totally me that I've gotten from this person, this person, this person, this person, this person, and then this one thing that I read that I have to do. Like, and that's why like in so many different industries, a lot of people like just be yourself.
Yeah. So aside from like developing a personal style and comfort level with that, getting to know my students better, you just understanding the content better over time.
Yeah.
Like working with a wide myriad of other care providers within EMS at all kinds of different levels, from paramedics, physicians, nurse practitioners, PAs, on and on and on. I've worked with many of them over the years and gleaned a lot of information, technical information from them to help bolster my just simple understanding around medicine and,
right.
The technical information that just takes, you can school that information to a degree, but you get so much practical more about, like, working with other people and in the context of the way you're using that information and gleaning from them. That's also changed a lot as the years have gone on.
Yeah. Well, I also found that like the rubber meeting the road versus the, well, this looks, the idea and concepts can be a lot different. And like, I think it's really smart, like finding out like, what do you actually do? Like, how does this actually work? Like practically speaking, because like, I know in almost every industry there's like, well, ideally we do it this way, but in reality, we never really get that far. We always do it this way and that's fine, you know? Or, hey, actually,
anybody that comes into teaching has an aspiration towards becoming a good teacher, a good educator, one kind or another. But virtually no one comes into it and excels right out of the gate. It just simply takes mileage to gain, to know who your students are and to understand the content better and just develop a tool bag of strategies and the way that you deliver it. It just takes mileage.
Speaking of that, just about how much time do you spend a week working on like curriculum and prepping for your next class and stuff like that?
Well, at this point in my career teaching wilderness medicine, I'm not writing up like lectures. Like the lectures are deep in my brainstem at this point.
Right.
The prep more has, sometimes I'm tweaking some presentation tool that I'm using one kind or another, like a PowerPoint or something like that, some of the content that's in there. In my head, like there will be the way skill sessions might be delivered. I might have, something might have come to me in a prior course where I thought like, just tweak that a little bit, try that. So it's sort of like flagging that in my head to like try that on
You're like,
the
you know what,
course.
maybe.
Yeah, the program that I teach for uses an online educational platform,
Uh-huh.
which is better. It's a better tool than we've had in the past for getting information out there, but it's still clunky in a lot of ways. So that takes effort to
Yeah.
tweak and make sure that people can access it and use it properly.
Right.
So that's the main things that I'm doing, besides just like logistical setup
Sure.
of the course, getting the facility arranged and getting the equipment and gear and getting the students informed and prepared.
Gotcha. Okay. So if you don't mind, let's talk about where you are now. Like, because you've come a long way. You've gone through a few different like spots in your career, different paths in your career. What does it look like right now?
In terms of how?
Like, you teach, and you teach from your own company, correct?
Yes, I teach. The program that I teach for is called Wilderness Medical Associates. That's
Uh-huh.
the certifying agency that created the curriculum. I run my own company, which is called Adventure Risk Management, which is the sponsor. I kind of wear two hats for the most part.
Okay.
I wear a hat as a WMA instructor, but then I run the company Adventure Risk Management, which is the sponsor and logistical provider of the course.
Okay.
I do both of those things.
Okay. Can you dive into a little bit like what those two hats look like on a real like practical from a practical standpoint? Like, what do those two hats look like? Like the WMA versus the instructor.
The WMA end of it has to do more with teaching methodologies and curriculum changes and making sure that it's taught to the standards, the curriculum standards that WMA has. I've had long engagement with that program throughout my entire career of teaching wellness medicine, and at different varying levels. At one point, I was part of what's called the faculty committee,
Mm-hmm.
was involved with helping to create some of the curriculum changes, and instructor hiring and training processes. And then I've kind of backed out of a lot of that in more recent years, and it's more just focusing on instructional aspects of teaching. The adventure risk management end of it is more the nuts and bolts part of it, the mechanical part of registering students and getting information out to the students, and then getting them on, arranging facilities for the course, contracting,
the budgeting. Kind of like logistical side of things.
Yeah, it's more nuts and bolts, logistical type stuff.
Gotcha. Okay.
So at any given time, on day to day, I'm dabbling in one or the other.
Right. Okay. That's an interesting mix. Oh, so you went from training with another company, like being a part of their training, like the in charge of all that, to your own company. What changed? What changed between like working for someone else directly versus working kind of for yourself?
Well, to be clear, I haven't changed who I'm teaching for. I've taught for WMA throughout.
Right. Yeah.
They've always been the curriculum developer and certifying agency I've taught for throughout. My role within WMA has changed. Originally, I was more of a direct employee of WMA as an instructor, and where they would send me on courses, and I traveled all across the country teaching these courses. But in the last 10 or 15 years in particular, it's been more locally based, and I'm actually what's called a licensed training company for WMA now. Okay. So I teach their curriculum according to their standards, but it's via my company, Adventure Risk Management.
Okay. So I guess the more accurate question is like, what has changed between being that direct employee versus licensed by them?
Because I'm dealing with everything. related to course delivery.
Okay.
The budgeting, the logistical part of it, registering students, dealing with all the complications of that takes up a lot of time. And it's something I didn't have to do as a direct employee of WMA. Somebody else handled that, and I just showed up and taught the course basically.
Yeah, so
it was a kind of a fun time in a lot of ways, because you don't really have to deal with the drama associated with people getting to the course.
Right.
They're whoever's in your class.
You just kind of show up
for the most part. Yeah. I mean, there's stuff that would come up on course around performance, that kind of thing. But now I'm dealing with all of that plus all of the pre-course drama.
Right. So it's more hands-on. It's more involved on your part, like
it's
before
start to finish with the students at this point.
Okay.
And it has advantages in that it's more flexible and allows me to be more home-based. More of my teaching now takes place close to home, where I can commute easily, whereas in the past, like the predominance of it was traveling everywhere.
Right. You said across the country,
which got exhausting.
There's nowhere close to the entire country. So okay.
So the disadvantage to it has to do with the fact that you're just dealing with a lot of nuts and bolts, and they can be very tiresome.
So for your course, because before you, like you said, you travel the whole country teaching these things, being more close to where you live, does that limit like client base? Like, do you have like a lot of people that like come back and retake the course later, or do you have a lot of new people coming through? Like, what does that look like? Like, how did the people you're training change with that change?
The students, the courses that my company will run will either be closed or contract courses for like a particular school or a program. Within a course, you'll have a bunch of their employees or their staff that are present with it. And it's not, many of them will not be open to the general public. But the majority, what I do these days in particular, are what are called open enrollment. So like the courses are all up on my company's website, and people just sign up for it. So what you wind up with is a mixed bag in a given class of lots of different experiences and backgrounds, that kind of thing.
So just because I know when I'm listening to a podcast and someone mentions something, I like to know where I can find that really quick. We'll have a time to plug it at the end. Like, where can people find these courses that you're talking about? Like, if they're like, whoa, I don't know there's someone that I could talk to about that. Like, where would they find those courses?
The courses that I teach are run through my company, which is adventureriskmanagement.com.
Okay, cool. So if you guys are interested, you can go check that out right now. All right. I'm going to move a little bit to a different spot. I want to talk about skills. Okay. Starting with like, what's a skill that you were surprised you needed in this industry? Like ones that you wouldn't have occurred to you had you not like run into it and be like, oh my gosh, I really need this in life or in my work.
I can't think of anything off the top of my head. I mean, genuinely, most of the skills that I knew were going to be necessary to teach wilderness medicine, like I was at least generally aware of what they were.
Okay.
I may not have had them.
Sure.
I needed to figure out a way to get them.
Sure.
But
nothing came up as
I mean, they're the typical technological changes that have occurred that have affected everybody's life. You know,
like I didn't realize I needed to know anything about websites and stuff
figuring
like
out
that.
Like software platforms and whatnot, educational platforms, like the one we're using right now within WMA is a pain. And just getting up to speed with how to use it properly. Takes a lot of time, but it wasn't surprising me that it was going to get there.
Technology happens.
And it's happening to all educational institutions. So
okay,
you just had to deal and figure it out.
So different skills question. If this is an arbitrary number, but like what would you say like the top, say, 3 skills you need in your industry?
As a wilderness medicine provider?
Yeah.
You need medical background.
Sure.
As a care provider. like actual hands-on experience in some
Mhm.
realm. There's lots of different ways to get that,
Sure.
but you need to have some background with that. You need to have an outdoor experience,
Mhm.
a context by which you can relate to the students,
Right.
and give examples of how medicine works in these remote contexts. And then you need to have the ability to like stand up in front of a group and like talk, okay, and communicate, and have a structure in mind around the way that you're going to deliver the information to people, and do it in an effective way and in an engaging way.
Okay.
Those are the three main skill sets that are required.
Nice. Succinct too. Yeah, that's really well said. I'm now a little worried because this is something that most people have had an answer to, but I'm worried with your industry. What's a skill that like everybody talks about, but no one really uses? Like something that, like, I know some like through high school people are like, when I'm ever going to use like the Pythagorean theorem or whatever in real life, and it's like, well, you need this, and but like, what's something in your industry that like everyone's like, yeah, you need to know this, you need to know this, and you're like, well, when do I use it?
Um, there's a number of different skills that have been taught in emergency medicine over the years,
Mm-hmm.
that have come and gone.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a function necessarily of wellness medicine per se. This is just the way medicine works.
Sure.
Medicine is dynamic and
Mm-hmm.
it evolves.
Yeah.
And there are things that we do now that we didn't do before. There are things that we've moved away from in medicine that used to seem to be like a good idea.
We don't do leeches anymore.
We don't do cutting and sucking for snake bites.
Yeah.
Okay, that we laugh at that now, but
well, yeah.
like 30 years ago, I mean, there were devices out there, and it was, as far as science understood, it seemed to make intuitive sense. But now that we've got 30 years of science and technology has tested this and found it's like, no, it doesn't work.
Right.
The kits that you buy from REI or anything like that, throw them away.
Yeah. I mean, there's a whole podcast about just the horrifying things we used to do in medicine.
Or things like traction splints for femur fractures, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Or, different simple therapies that were used to treat shock. There's a lot of things that used to be thought to make sense and that we've kind of moved away from because science and technology has gotten better. And and again, we laugh at it now, but like, there's a lot of things that we do that we just from 3 years ago that we did during COVID, that with our limited knowledge of what was going on at that time, it was the best sense that we had at that time. But now we look back and it's like, well, that's pretty pointless. It didn't really have any value.
Can you give me one example or like one or two examples of this just in your experience that like really stuck out to you?
In respect to, let's not talk about COVID.
Yeah, no, I just meant generally you mentioned a lot of different things.
I brought that up.
It's okay. We'll just brush past that. Like you said, 30 years, there's been a lot of changes and updates. What's something that like, what's a really big one that like, just like they flipped the script on? They're like, no, absolutely no, that's a terrible idea. I don't know why we ever did that. Like, can you give an example of something like that?
A couple that I just mentioned were probably very good examples, like cutting and sucking for snake bites. Or
what did that change? Like, what changed with that? Like,
there were some tests that were done, a number of studies that were done on actually testing mechanical devices around their effectiveness, around removing venom from snakebite, venom snakebite. And they were just found that like it's just simply not effective. Okay,
because like, I mean, that's something that I know. Like, you have to suck the venom out of a snake bite. Like, that's something that
if you want to find an interesting document that will help, that really kind of turned the corner in a lot of the ways. It was in a medical journal, and you can Google this pretty easily. The title of it is "Snake Venom Extraction Devices. They Just Suck." Like, that is literally the title of the document. Okay.
I love when doctors can be a little funny in their stuff.
These were actually medical students.
Medical students. Okay.
That conducted this test and then created this paper and published it out there.
Sorry, can you say that one more time?
Snake venom extraction devices. They just suck.
Okay.
It's a real thing. So there were other studies that were done that was just one of the more humorous, funny ones. But it's information like that started to just make clear that that practice that we seemed to make sense a long time ago.
Right.
Just doesn't work.
Sure.
And now we kind of laugh at it.
Yeah. Well, like I said, like, I mean, I didn't know that changed. I didn't know about the cutting part of it, but like I've heard the whole like you have to snuff the snake venom out, otherwise you'll die. And I'm like, okay, I mean,
Hollywood has not helped this at all.
Yeah. Let's talk about that for a little bit.
Nor is the internet in a lot of ways.
So I was just thinking about this the other day. I was watching a cartoon, Bob's Burgers, and they're in this like REI type store, and they're like trying to climb to the skylight because they got locked in after hours or whatever, and they're trying to get out, and like they're tying knots and stuff and like using harnesses and like, and I'm sitting there like I was in pain. I was in mental anguish as they're like, yeah, like they were asking like what your crotch size is to get the right harness. And I'm like, I've never once in 8 years asked somebody what their crotch size was to get them the right harness. And then they're like, they were tying knots that didn't make sense. And I'm like,
that's not necessary to fit a climbing harness.
No.
Crotch size. It really isn't.
No. But
if
like
somebody's asking that question, there's an ulterior motive.
Right. Well, but that's the thing is like I was watching this, I'm like, okay, this is all wrong. Like, and I'm like, okay, you know what? Probably in almost every industry, there's people that like watch a show or watch a movie or read something on the internet that they're like, where are they getting this information? So like, as far as like media representation, or like just general assumptions that you might get in the job, like what is it, like how well do you think people like wilderness medicine is represented in the media?
Within the realm of the outdoor world, outdoor education, adventure education world, it's relatively well understood.
Okay.
More broadly, most people really don't know what wilderness medicine means. Like when you say that phrase to most people that have no idea with the outdoor world, they start thinking like pyramids and like crystals and meditation and like creating poultices from chickens that you put on snake bites, that kind of stuff. Like, and it has nothing to do with that. Honestly, like people ask me, that don't do outdoor stuff all the time, say what I do. And I generally just don't bother trying to explain it to them because it tends to result in a lot of glazed over looks and not really understanding, because it's very contextual, and then if you understand the context of being in the outdoors or in some way, somehow or another, then it makes sense and it's relatable. But if you don't really do any of that kind of stuff, then it doesn't work. Yeah.
Can I tell you two fun stories about
two? Do we have time for two?
It's very brief stories about how I learned what you did. So the first one was you were teaching a course while I was, I think, running a paintball game or something. I forget exactly what it was. But I saw a group of people standing around, and I saw somebody at the time look like they just had a heart attack and fall on the ground while a bunch of people just watched. And I got really worried because I'm like, is someone going to help them? And I think I even asked, like, hey, do I need to call someone? And they're like, you're like, no, it's okay. We're learning. I'm like, oh, that would have been nice to like, I didn't get told by anything by anybody above me. And I was like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah, that has happened more than a few times.
Sure.
Doing scenarios and simulations, and the general public will come by and see what's going on and be like, oh my God. Like, I'm going to call 911. I've had fire departments show up during simulations that we were running.
I mean, you do very accurate simulation.
Yeah, they're pretty. Yeah. Somebody just walks by.
Yep.
Like there's makeup, blood, and there's screaming people going on. Like that's happened.
And that's my second one. Was me and a friend were taking a walk just through the mountains, and we walked across somebody, and they just had an error in their knee, and I'm like, what the heck?
Looked good, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
caught your eye, didn't it?
Yeah, like because we have archery, and I'm like, dude, that's vastly far, but
that's one of the skill sets you develop as an instructor is your ability to use what's called moulage. Moulage is makeup for simulations like this.
Yeah,
and it needs to get the point across,
right?
and be relatively realistic. You want to create scenarios with people that are like kind of a little over the top to what you typically experience. The idea being that like if they can handle that, in these simulations,
the normal
then like
situation,
the kind of typical stuff that comes along, it's like, yeah, I got this.
Right.
I can totally handle this.
Yeah. But it's wild to stumble upon someone with an arrow in the knee just walking through things, and then have to be like, how? That's not our arrow. Okay, okay. I know what's going on. Like it took me a while to like.
I could tell you a lot of stories about these kinds of things from over the years.
Can we get one like good story really quick? Like what's your go-to? Like I got
a colleague of mine. One of the scenarios that we'll run during these courses is attempts to try to draw a contrast between the way that you might respond to somebody in an urban environment versus the way you might respond to somebody in a more wilderness type of environment.
Right.
So one of the scenarios that was run a number of years ago by a colleague of mine involved a gun-wielding maniac, at a car accident, And this guy is running around with a gun, and people are trying to approach him. It's in a car accident,
Right.
And like the guy is like the driver or the passenger in the car, and he gets out of the car. He's like, "Get away from me! Stop! You don't freaking touch me, do you?" And then he pulls out a gun, and then people start approaching him and trying to wrestle the gun from him, and he starts like pop, 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 like shooting people. Yeah, it's quite dramatic.
It's like this is an intense scene.
This is going on at a college university campus. In a parking lot. And it just so happened to be a parent visitation day on this day.
No.
Yeah, and like some group of parents is walking around like when the college students there, like, and over here we have the student rec center, and over here, what the? Yeah, it was those kind of things have happened before.
Oh my!
And you try to mitigate this by like telling campus security that it's going to go down, and like warning people around. But you know how college campuses are, and how communication happens there.
It's anything
if like goes by the wayside. They just kind of go like, "Oh yeah, okay,
something's happening,"
and
cool.
then it goes down. Yeah.
Oh my god! Yeah, I wouldn't be like the dean trying to explain that to parents. It's like, no, it
didn't go well.
It's not. No one's in danger. Wow. All right. That's a great story. So what about faux pas? Like, is there anything that like you want people to know that's like, don't do this, don't, like that's just not a good thing in general? Like anything that comes to mind with that?
As an instructor of wilderness medicine?
Yeah. Or I guess
don't fake it. I'll tell you that. Okay. Don't fake it. People can see, they know when you're again being authentic and genuine, and like you're speaking from a knowledge base, and they know when you're not. And that when you try to emulate somebody else or somebody else's experience and make it your own, like don't fake it. Don't BS your students. I think it's okay to say to a group of students like, hey, I really don't know what the answer is to that, but I'm going to find out. Okay, I'm going to look into that, and I will get back to you. And then you look into it, and then you get back to them and follow up on it. But like to stand up there and just kind of like BS your way through some presentation because you don't feel comfortable with that, like people know it destroys your credibility, and and you fall apart real fast in the whole experience.
Yeah, that's something that I learned as a trainer. Like that's something that like my people get used to me, like when they ask a question, I'm like, that's a great question, and they know that means I don't know yet, but I will find out for them. Like they know that that's what that means, is like, because I'm like, that's a really good question that I haven't thought of. It hasn't come up before, or maybe I haven't thought of it enough. But like being genuine, they know then that they can ask you, and they're going to get a real answer. If I answer them, they know I know what I'm talking about. Yeah. If I don't answer, they know that I'm going to find out what it is. Yeah. Okay. What would you say is the hardest part of your job? Like just being honest, like what's the thing you're like, okay, I guess I have to do this, you know?
I would say, even though I've taught this for a long, long time, I'm still pretty capable of rallying energy, even though it's the same course I've taught. I can't tell you how many times. Actually, I could tell you, but I'm not going to. And I can still rally my energy and get psyched. It's a little challenging, I'll be honest with you, in the first day of a long 5-day course.
Right.
But yeah, that is challenging. There have definitely been cultural changes that have occurred within the country around being an educator that has magnified some of these difficulties. And that anybody that works within any realm of education, any institution, college, universities, K through 12, whatever, can attest to the same thing. Working at a camp, okay,
yeah.
You get a lot of that spillover too.
Yeah.
There's a different level of expectation among students that can be challenging to work with that I don't think existed a number of years ago. Yeah.
Okay.
Those are more contemporary challenges going on right now.
Okay. What about the easiest? What's like the easiest aspect of this for you?
The easiest part?
Yeah.
Easiest or most entertaining?
We'll well, I want to know both the entertaining part too, but start with the easiest, then we'll do entertaining.
The easiest is just simply like, I know how to run a course.
Right. It's just ingrained.
Wilderness First Responder, by the way, is sort of like the mainstream course, the flagship course that I teach the most of, that most outdoor educators are looking for. And that, like, at this point, like, I know so very well what it is these people want and what they need and how to deliver it well and efficiently and effectively. Like, it's the logistical pieces and like the difficulties with students' lives that go on. That's the hard part. Yeah. But like, when that stuff is relatively quiet and under control, like, it's pretty easy to deliver a really good course.
Yeah. I mean, you like you said, you've taught this,
been there,
so
done
many
that
times.
So many times.
It's just kind of not cruise control, but like it goes, you know.
Yeah.
Like,
and it just tends to go well.
I mean, I'm the same way with like any spiel for any of the activities. Like, I call it a spiel. Why? Because I know my brain knows it. I could probably tell somebody all the rules for paintball while I'm half asleep, like going to bed. You know, I just like, okay, barrel plug. I can go through that really easily. And it's like that. Yeah, I can see how that would be easy once you've done it so many times. Like, it's just like, you just have to remember that like one tweak you made or the update that happened or whatever. Okay.
Yeah, you have to be a little, because it can be kind of autoplay at this point. You got to be kind of careful with that.
Yeah.
I need to be careful with that because every group of students is different. And like, they tend to fall into some pretty familiar categories.
Right.
But people do ask questions about certain things that are outside the realm sometimes.
Little thinkers.
And you need to listen. You know,
right.
You really need to listen carefully and not just use a canned answer.
Right.
Even though you are so deeply familiar with teaching the stuff, you still need to like keep the lights on and listen.
Right. Yeah. And that can be, I mean, I know I've struggled with that a little bit with like just giving the spiel a million times. Like there's one day I did it 4 times in one day. And I'm like, sorry, what did you ask? It's like, I've never had that question before.
Usually people ask the same questions, but
you
do
every once in a while get that like, wait, hold on. Okay, that was out of the blue. Cool.
And that was kind of a weird one.
Right.
Or no, that was actually a pretty good one.
Yeah, like someone went out of the like stereotypical questions and you had to kind of okay. Now I do want to ask you about the amusing part that you brought up. You mentioned amusing. What's the most amusing part of your job?
Well, let's see. sometimes the way people understand this information and then try to apply it out there, at least in my inside voice, okay, like it is very funny to watch. Okay.
Sure.
Um, yeah. Obviously, as an educator, you can't you can't laugh. Okay.
Right.
You just can't do that. Okay?
Right.
Unless it's blatantly intended to be funny.
Sure.
Obviously.
But you can't be like, I taught you this. Oh, that's nope. No, you don't know.
Really the way that
Band-Aid
works.
doesn't go in the eye. Like,
No.
you have to be like,
you take
okay.
the arrow out of the knee. Don't leave it in.
Right. But you have to like, I mean, it's same for any age. If you start laughing at them for trying.
Some of the, there's definitely students or groups of students in particular that can be very entertaining and funny to work with.
Mm-hmm.
They tend to be cohesive groups of one kind or another. I teach courses for a rafting company that works on the Kern River.
Okay.
And has been out there forever and ever and ever. And I've taught courses for them forever and ever and ever. And that group of like raft guides tend to be like really fun and entertaining because they're pretty relaxed and comfortable about stuff. And they know me, I know them.
Right.
And those tend to be like...
Familiarity helps a lot with that, yeah.
I think there's just something about the culture of raft guides in general.
Okay.
That tends to be just like, they're just fun people to hang out with.
Good to know.
And they will use the information sometimes and like craft it in some really entertaining ways.
All right. Now, if these are the same thing, we can skip over this. But sometimes it's not the same, and that is, what's your least favorite aspect? So, because I know the hardest and least favorite can be different. Because some, like for me, paperwork's the hardest, but dealing with people that don't want to understand things is my least favorite. It's not the hardest; it's just not fun. Yeah.
My least favorite is dealing with most students that come into a course when they prepare adequately in the way that has been mapped out for them.
Mm-hmm.
And they engage themselves fully within the course, like most students succeed.
Right.
I know how to get them there. I know how to
Mm-hmm.
get people there. But you will sometimes have people, for whatever motivational reason, oftentimes just motivational related,
Mm-hmm.
that just don't get there. And dealing with that student is challenging. More significantly is the student that doesn't prepare adequately. And there is, in the format, the most common format of the Wilderness First Responder course that is offered these days is a shortened format where the student does a lot of pre-course work to didactically dump a bunch of information in their head. And then you spend the 5 days on site learning how to apply the skills and knowledge to it. That's an adaptation of the traditional WFR course, which was an 8 or 9 day course.
Really great. Where you said WFR.
WFR is the acronym for Wilderness First Responder.
Okay, there
That's
you go.
what people know it as WFR.
Okay, because I don't think you mentioned that before. I
did.
just want to clarify.
Good catch, Joel.
Thank you. It's like the WFR what? What dog?
Yeah, the traditional WFR course was 8 or 9 days long, and it was pretty much you could walk in there without any pre-course preparation, and like all the information would get delivered to you, and if you were engaged in it, like you would succeed.
Right.
But this format, the 5 day format, or some of these hybrid formats that are around these days,
Mm-hmm.
they do require extensive pre-course work that's designed to replace about 30 hours of class time. And as you can well imagine, okay, in theory, this should be a better thing. Right. People can kind of like immerse themselves in information at their speed, in their life, and fit it in where they need to. But as you can well imagine, and people in the way life works, it just doesn't work that way.
Right.
And a significant number of people they just don't immerse themselves. Life is busy for them, and they aren't able to do it.
Right.
And on occasion, you will get students that will show up that are just not. They haven't prepared.
They didn't do any of the homework, and they're showing up.
The pre-course work is like really short.
Right.
And like dealing with those students is really, really difficult.
Sure.
When they've
show up,
devoted the time, they've showed up here, they've spent the money,
But they just haven't put in all the effort necessary.
It's been made very clear to them that that pre-course work is expected and required,
Right.
and then they know they didn't do it. Like dealing with that situation is not fun. Definitely one of the least
favorite
enjoyable parts of the whole course.
Okay, let's switch over to the happy side. What's your favorite part of like doing this job?
When it works. When you get towards the latter part of the course, and I see a student who clearly has engaged themselves in the pre-course study process and trying to develop the skill sets, and then we get to the latter part of the course and it gets into more scenario-based stuff where they're applying it, and I see them perform well, and they do these things and that they've been taught to do, and that that's gratifying, and it makes you feel like you're doing the right thing. Or that, and after the course, I encourage students contact me after the course and let me know about how they've used the stuff. Right. And I do get regular contact from people around using the stuff, and they are very grateful for the skill sets that they have. That really makes you feel like as an instructor you're doing the right thing. You're making a difference. The follow-ups,
hey, I really appreciated this.
I had a guy in a course a couple months ago. He just emailed me 2 days ago saying, hey, I had that course I took with you in August. I've used it as a ski patroller up in a ski area over here in Big Bear. I've used it several times with several people. The skier versus tree, lots of consciousness. And
sorry, did you say versus tree? I'm like, that doesn't end well. Yeah. It's not very much of a versus.
Yeah, it's a thing. It's totally a thing.
But
things like that. I've had students that have used these skills in very dramatic ways, have had very horrific incidents occur that they were present for. Yeah. And then having them follow up with you afterwards and say, you know what, I cannot believe how useful this information was, and how much I appreciate my experience there.
Yeah, and just knowing that you were able to help somebody.
That's very gratifying.
I can imagine. I can imagine that. Let's talk a little bit about certifications, trainings and certifications, because it's one thing to talk about skills that are needed, but just out of curiosity, what certifications do you have to be teaching that help you teach other people things? Because for me, I've got first aid and CPR and AED certification, which is very base, bottom of the rung there. What do you have certifications, licenses, and stuff like that stack up to go towards this?
To run my company, I have a number of sort of traditional business related licenses and that kind of thing you need to have to run the company.
Sure.
During the time that I worked as an outdoor guide, I held the typical medical training. I've had my wilderness EMT certification for a long time at this point, throughout my entire career.
Okay.
So you have to maintain that, plus a professional level of CPR. And as a rock climbing guide, I held a certification from the American Mountain Guide Association as a rock climbing guiding certification.
Right.
In the realm of wilderness medicine, it's maintaining. Wilderness Medical Associates requires that you maintain a EMT and a wilderness EMT. So I have to keep that up. I have to maintain my. There's a certain amount of participation I need to have within. As an instructor and participation within instructor trainings within Wilderness Medical Associates. Okay. I have to continue to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So as you run these courses and stuff like that, are there questions that you wish people asked more often?
More often?
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that everyone's get these really good questions out of the course that you're whoa, I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, I wish I would like to hear questions that reflected the fact that people prepared for the course adequately and relatively speaking are solid with that information, and are asking questions about how it applies in a context that they work or play within.
Mm-hmm.
Thoughtful questions that kind of go,
that prove that they've been thinking.
It reflects the fact that like they've done the foundational work,
mm-hmm.
and they can speak in such a way where it reflects that.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of go beyond it.
Okay.
Yeah, we like those kind of questions.
Okay. What about if I change the context to like you were talking about people that don't know exactly what you do, like what are the questions you wish people would ask versus like, so like you like gather plants and like make things and then you pray to this forest for healing. Like what questions you wish people asked you when talking about wilderness medicine?
Somebody that's not taking a course, somebody that just wants to know
like
what it's
instead
about.
of just like the uneducated questions or the wild assumptions about what wilderness medicine is, like what would be a better, like what was a question you wish people would ask that you could actually answer well to give them an idea of what you're doing actually?
Pretty basic stuff, like nothing elaborate.
Okay.
Like what is this information?
Mm-hmm.
Who uses it?
Okay.
How long are the courses? What's in the course?
Okay.
Pretty common questions.
Okay. Just slightly.
I don't mind people asking about like pyramids and crystals, that kind of thing. My inside voice laughs a little bit. Okay? But
yeah,
usually my answer and my tone makes it pretty clear. Like, no, that's not what this is about, and they get that.
It's like, so you don't use quartz? Okay. In general, just like worldwide PSA, what's something you wish more people knew about wilderness medicine? Just generally speaking,
that it's useful. It's not just about like using it on a climbing trip or a backcountry skiing trip or hiking or anything like that. That really where people use this information most frequently is in pretty urban environments. It's not
really
like, out in the backcountry, like sometimes they'll use it out there, but you're equal, if not more likely to use it like on the drive to or from the trailhead.
Interesting.
Like, or in your job, or at a shopping mall, or in a restaurant. Like it's emergency medicine. You know, it's not specific and exclusive to a wilderness kind of a context.
Right.
It's simply emergency medicine,
right.
And that people get sick and hurt and injured and die in all contexts.
Right.
And that we spend most of our time in pretty urban type of contexts.
Right.
And that. To understand, like, no, this is a useful skill set for anybody at any point in their life.
I don't think I've ever met someone who's like, wow, I regret learning this medical information.
And there's people that don't really understand what this niche of emergency medicine training is about. They tend to associate it with a lot with like CPR, or a Red Cross first aid class or something like that. And that what we teach, what I teach with my courses is much, much, much deeper than that, and much more practical than that. It's you're being a practitioner, a medical practitioner, in a discipline, in a context of medicine that is very unique and challenging to work within, and that it would be nice if people understood that better. I don't know that you can understand it in any other way except like to do it.
Right.
But because people do come to realize like, wow, this is a skill set I use all the time.
Right.
It helps me to understand, not just respond to sick or injured people, but like the sick or injured people in my life, friends and family, like when they have stuff going on, I can understand it better.
Right.
And I can help others be more useful to sick or injured friends,
right.
Or family member, whatever.
So this is actually a great segue to a question that I kind of skipped over because it wasn't the right time to ask it when it came up in my notes. But like, what is it that you teach? Like, give some examples of like, because you're talking about like it can apply to more urban things. Like, what types of things are people learning on your course?
There is a whole range of, for starters, patient assessment, how to walk up to a sick or injured patient and gather information from them in a productive, organized, structured manner, and then create an appropriate action plan for it. And the system that you're using there is consistent with, if you take any EMT class or pre-hospital care course anywhere in the country or the world, you learn how to assess a patient. That's really probably the most fundamental skill as a care provider, is your ability, again, to walk in, gather information, create an appropriate action plan.
Okay.
That's the framework that everything fits within. And then there's like a ton of individual topics,
right?
Critical system problems that go on with circulatory system, respiratory system, nervous system, musculoskeletal injuries, spine injuries, basic life support, a whole range of basic life support that goes well beyond just plain CPR.
Right.
A wide range of environmental emergencies, how to package a patient and transport a patient, how to create an evacuation plan. All these things within the context of being in the outdoors, where you may or may not have the right commercial made equipment available to you.
Right. So it's a lot of, sorry, my brain is trying to phrase this correctly, because I almost used the entirely wrong words for this, but like it's building a context to deal with a situation, not training to deal with this situation or that situation. I mean, CPR is, if their heart is not pumping correctly, you're making sure their heart's pumping and they're breathing, like, and then you're shocking them if necessary. What you do is making sure that they're ready for and can handle situations by themselves, by themselves building a awareness and an understanding of what's going on, so that it's not necessarily limited to what specifics that you've taught them, but giving them the tools to be able to figure out what's going on. Would you say that's accurate?
CPR is just a single skill set in the whole range of things that we're teaching people in these courses. You do CPR for a particular problem,
right?
But there are many problems that we're trying to train people to understand.
Right. Like if someone breaks their back, CPR is not going to do much, and AED is not going to do much if someone broke their back.
Yeah.
But your training kind of guides people, gives them the tool set to figure out what the problem is as best as they can, and then build
the course of action.
Yeah, around it. So it's not just like, oh, if someone's drowning, you have to do this. It's okay, what all is wrong with them?
A really important premise in my teaching and in the program that I teach for is that it's principle based. That rather than teaching people to do sort of like a see this, do that approach to medicine, that people understand medicine, the principles of medicine, and that you operate from a principle base. Yeah, more so. That just works better in the real world.
Right.
It takes more effort, and it can be more challenging for people to kind of like wrap their head around. But it is definitely that's more practical way. This is the way skilled practitioners work within medicine.
Right.
Is they understand the principles here, and they create an action plan that's based upon the situation they're in.
Yeah. Well, how my mom would phrase that is teaching people how to think, not what to think. And I've always liked that idea of like, if I understand all the different parts, it's not just, well, this says this, so that must be the problem. It's okay, well, let's look at what's actually happening. Let's figure out, okay, well, but this can also cause that problem, and my dad worked as a mechanic, and like, there's times where like people are like, oh no, this is the problem. It says this. He's like, that's not the problem. If you just do that, nothing's going to change. Yeah. You need to go into here, fix that, and then this doesn't need to be touched at all. It's like building that awareness of the bigger picture lets people figure things out for themselves versus being like, well, I have to do this. Why? Well, because if I follow this step-by-step instruction, this is the next thing. It's like, well, but they're fine. Well, but I have to do it, you know.
Yeah, a laundry list approach to identifying problems is not very useful in the real
No,
world.
because people aren't laundry lists.
You need to operate from a knowledge base and
Yeah.
and by principles, basically.
Right. And if there's because one of the things that I find in a lot of different situational trainings that I've seen or heard of is like, if situations overlap, people are like, well, wait, okay, what do I have to do first? What do, like, okay, their back's broken and they're drowning, or like they have a bite and, you know, whatever, like, but if I do CPR, it's going to make their back worse. I think, maybe, I don't know. No one ever talked about this specific combination of scenarios.
Yeah.
But your teaching approach gives them that tool, like, okay, let's figure out step-by-step priority lists and all that. And then like, okay, how do we execute this? How do I make sure that they're still alive at the end of the day?
Yeah.
Okay. I like that. I like that a lot, actually. So I always like to kind of not quite close out just yet, but like towards the end, I like to make sure that people, if they're listening to this and they're like, oh my gosh, this is kind of what I want to do. Like, this sounds amazing. I love the idea of like teaching like wilderness medicine. Like, what advice would you give someone like just getting this bug?
First of all, take a course from a good program and see if it rings your bell. And if it does, then you'll want to develop those skill sets in the 3 areas that I mentioned a little bit earlier, which is patient care, outdoor experience, teaching experience.
Right.
Those 3 things. That's what it's going to take to go down that road.
Okay. And then just a little bit more of the long-term advice, like what would be a little bit like a couple months down the road, they have some of that, like what's the next piece of advice, like general piece of advice you'd give?
Be patient.
Patience.
It's there's a misconception that teaching wilderness medicine, especially for the program I teach for, is a simple thing to do. Like, you can just take like a Red Cross first aid instructor video training program and then you get anointed to be able to teach first aid. It doesn't work that way.
Sure.
That to go through the entire instructor training process and get to a point where you actually lead courses, if you are very diligent about it and had plenty of practice and opportunity to develop your skill sets, will take probably easily 1.5 to 2 years. And even then you won't be very good at it. I don't think I really started to like get this and started teaching like quality courses until I was probably like 10 years into it.
Oh, wow.
As I look back at it.
Yeah.
What I taught early on was like adequate, but like
right.
from where I know people need to be and what you can do with this, like it takes time.
And so there's a difference between it's okay, it meets the standards, and this is amazing, this is worthwhile, this is, you know.
Yeah. So it just takes mileage to get there.
Right.
And be patient with the fact that like you're gonna make mistakes, you're gonna flail, and that but if you're diligent about continuing to apply yourself to it, like it gets better.
Okay. I like that. If you were able to go just back in time and talk to yourself at the beginning of this journey, and that particular thing is up to you and determine where that is, but like if you could give a piece of advice to yourself when you were younger starting off this journey, what piece of advice would you give yourself?
Be patient.
Hey, you know, that's a great piece of advice. Yeah. But just like
relax. Just be yourself. That the reason why I said earlier on that like emulating doesn't work is because I tried doing that.
Right.
And like it's a common trap for people to fall into.
Right.
And like when eventually I came to learn as the years went on, like, oh yeah, when I'm relaxed, I'm just like relating my, as me, as a person, people latch onto that.
Yeah.
And that Just relax and be comfortable
Mm-hmm.
in your own skin that way.
I will say,
Easier said than done.
yes, it's easier said than done, but that's something that like relaxed people are just better.
And much more engaging.
Yeah, and so like oddly enough, that's why I do like the icebreaker questions beforehand, like because my first two interviews, they were both people I knew. One was my brother, and one was our cook Zach. I'd known them both for a while, and so I'm like, okay, we'll just jump in, record, and like I had quite a few people tell me like they just seem so stiff. They just like, and I'm like, so ever since then, like my sister bought these really cool things for me called chat packs, and like I open with stuff like that. I open with stuff like, oh, that's not too hard. It's not a really difficult question. It helps them like calm down, get into the moment of just like we're just talking, and then from there, like my interviews, in my opinion, and a few other people have corroborated this, like the interviewees feel more natural versus, and then yeah, and so like that relaxing is actually very important in a lot of, I would say, generally speaking, for everybody, people need to learn how to relax properly, and that helps them a lot. Okay. One of my favorite questions is what I call the magic snap. Okay. Like just pretend you can just snap magic snap. Like thinking like
it's a camp thing.
No, this is, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily take full credit for it, but like, this is a question I've developed myself, but like kind of like a genie wish of like, if you could just snap your fingers and have exactly what you wanted, like be in this exact position you wanted, what would that look like? Like, because for some people it's like, they wanted like multiple stores of whatever it is, or some it's just like they want their own industrial kitchen that like sells like their own restaurant. Some want to be on Mars. Some are like just at home now, working on my next project. Like what's your like hypothetical perfect workspace? Like where would you be? What does your company look like? What does your workspace look like, etc.?
The facility that I teach at here at Ottawa Mines is very good. I'm very happy with it.
Okay.
I wouldn't change too much about that part of it.
Okay.
It's what, having taught this course in a lot of places for many, many years, this place is uniquely
suited.
Great. Okay. In terms of the space and the facility and the amenities for students, the people I work with here and interact with here at the camp, like it's very good, and I enjoy that a lot. I think more students, or having every course filled the way I'd like them to be filled. That would be helpful. I'd like it to be there.
Okay.
I'd like, this won't happen.
This is all pipe dream fantasy.
Yeah,
so
I'd like people to take the information that's put out there that I prepare, and the roadmap that I put out in front of people, and like virtually everyone to pick that roadmap up and follow it, and prepare adequately, so that we can, once you get to the course, you can take off from there and go to a higher place of development. That won't happen because people are people.
People don't read things. People don't take initiative often.
I'd like all of this and a bowl of chocolate ice cream, please.
And I do happen to know that you're very particular about people following instructions. Because I have been on the receiving end as a host here of people calling me for information, and you're not very particularly happy with the people when they don't follow the instructions you gave about who they need to call and stuff like that. So like I can understand like,
yeah, you're trying to create success for people,
and
that is the goal here.
Right?
Like, is that you want them to have, you really genuinely want them to have a good experience, a successful experience, and get what they want.
But if they can't follow a map
as the experienced person, you know how to get there, okay?
Right?
Like, and you lay the information out to people. Like when people can latch onto that, like that's what you want.
Right.
It's good for everybody.
Yeah. But like if they can't follow a actual physical map and very simple directions on how to find where they're staying that night,
it just gets complicated.
It doesn't set a good precedent either. It's like, okay, so you're not going to try up front how can I expect you to be trying throughout this whole course? Yeah. Okay. Did I miss anything? Is there anything that you still want to talk about? Something that maybe we didn't talk about enough, or maybe just a question I didn't ask, or just anything like that?
In the realm of wilderness medicine?
Yeah. Well, I guess, or anything else that we've talked about today, or anything that is relevant to what we've been talking about.
Oh, that's good enough for this niche of me in my life.
Okay. I know that
we all have many, many, many more niches.
Right.
But this is an adequate
okay.
focus on this particular one.
I know that I do eventually in the future want to bring you back on, because you also have a exciting other passion of like that rock climbing, mountain climbing, like that whole world.
Yeah, it's a whole other niche.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But like that's a podcast for another day. Yeah. Okay. And then you have a website that you'd like to talk about.
adventureriskmanagement.com.
Okay.
Pretty much all of the everything we talked about here, logistical stuff, links to Wilderness Medical Associates are there. You can find out a lot about these courses and where my company offers them and whatnot.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So if you guys are listening to this and you want to, maybe start your own adventure into teaching this type of stuff, he said a great spot is taking a course, and that's a great course to take. Yeah. Well, John, thank you so much for being on my show. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. I appreciate the opportunity, Joel.
Yeah. I've been looking forward to this for a while. So, yeah. If you guys like what you've heard today and like what I do, and want to support me, you can find me on Patreon at Curious Joel. Nope. I did this wrong again. Patreon.com/Curious Joel. And you can find stuff like the pre-interview for John today. That's going to be up there. All of my pre-interview questions are going to be up there. And then you also have some special episodes that you're not going to find anywhere else. As always, a big shout out to Milana.com or Milana.com or at Milana's Designs on Instagram. She's the one that does the amazing artwork for my show. If you are looking for great pictures, my wife December is just about done with her year of posting on Instagram. You can find her amazing pictures. She's got a lot coming up for the rest of this month. You can find her at DecemberNoel.com or December Photo on Instagram. As always, you can find me on Twitter at Joel Circo, on Instagram at CuriousJoelcast, and email me at CuriousJoelcast@gmail.com. Thank you all so much for listening, and I'll catch you all on the next episode.